Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri and Amy Cornell. And I want to say I was at Inkers Con. I was speaking at Inkers Con recently, and I got up on stage and somebody ran up before I started and said, "Oh my gosh, I love you guys. Where's Amy?" It's the first thing she said. It's like, "Oh, where's Amy?" So she's a podcast listener. And that was really fun. And I told Amy, I'm like, well, now you need to start going with me on all these speaking events because everybody's looking for there's Penny, where's Amy? So that was really
right.
It's really always fun to meet up with listeners. And it's interesting because I think the podcast has been a really almost better tool than the blog to reach people, because it's, not that the blog isn't real time, but I think a podcast is real time in a very different way, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we've done a couple of podcasts on publishers, working with publishers, what to look for in a publisher. But I think it's really worth doing another show on this, just because we get so many questions on this topic. And if you go back through some of our shows, you can definitely check out some of the other ones that we've done. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the questions to ask a publisher or how to vet a publisher remains consistent. But I think that one of the pieces that confuses an author is there is an assumption that there's a cachet attached to going with a publisher. And I understand where that comes from. To a degree, it's true, but there's a caveat to that, in that getting a Simon and Schuster deal is that there's cachet in that, right? But just needing a publisher for the sake of needing a publisher is not a good decision to make. I mean, you have to really look for a publisher or find a publisher, and that's what hopefully we'll cover in this call. That is that's really going to serve your needs. And when I say publisher, I really mean publishing service. So a publishing service is a company that will, maybe they'll share the royalties with you. A lot of times they're referred to as a hybrid, or like Ingram Spark is a publishing service, right? And maybe they'll do the cover design, maybe they won't. They'll do the interior, maybe they won't. They facilitate the creation of the book, but they don't do, like, usually they don't do editing. They don't do marketing unless it's sending out a press release. And if any of you have been listening for a while, you know how I feel about that. But that's really so publishing a hybrid publisher or a publishing service is really what we're talking about, because that's where authors, so they strike relationships with these folks thinking that the publisher is going to take great care of them, and many of them do. We work with a lot of hybrid and small press and publishing services that do really, really great work, but it's the occasional one that doesn't, that is part of the need for this, to do this podcast, because authors get themselves into terrible situations, right, Amy?
Yeah, I think what the biggest, and I often I explain it to authors this way, is that it's typically a misunderstanding of what the expectations are of publishing services. It's not necessarily because the publishing services are just out there doing shoddy work and they're getting away with this. You know what I mean? Like, they know what they do. They have a lane that they stay in. But I think a lot of authors end up opting to sign with these services thinking that, phew, I've got this all off my plate. All these things will be taken care of. I'm good to go. And what ends up happening is slowly but surely they hit these little roadblocks where it's like, oh, they don't actually cover this. Oh, they're not actually going to do any marketing. Oh, they're not going to, you know what I mean? It starts piling up that what the service actually offers is very different from what the author was expecting. And again, it's a lot of times just a misunderstanding and not really knowing the industry, which is fair. I mean, there's no reason a lot of you listening should know to ask for all these things. And that's why we've done numerous shows on working with publishers, potentially um, interviewing publishers, things like that, just so you kind of understand what questions to ask, where to start from, and kind of where you can expect there to be gaps in what a lot of publishers or publishing services actually offer versus what you are really going to need. Because, making it in the market nowadays, there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's not very often anymore, Penny. I would say the one-stop shopping is few and far between these days, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that the one-stop shop is really, and I mean, I think that, and again, we've done shows on this as well. The issue really with wanting to hand it off to somebody is that you can so easily do it yourself. I know that when you're just starting out, it sounds really, it sounds like a huge amount of work and something that, like, oh my gosh, I have to learn this, I have to learn that. But the other problem with taking this on yourself, I said problem, I meant benefit. The other benefit of taking this on yourself is that you learn so much in the process. So if you come away from this podcast and you think, oh my gosh, now I don't really know, and I'm really concerned, and do they have my best interest at heart? Try to do it yourself, because it's actually very, very, very easy. One of the biggest challenges that authors face is knowing whether or not they get a pre-order for their book. Now, a pre-order, like if it's your first book, the publisher may think, well, this author doesn't really need a pre-order. It's for their first book. Like, I get it, and I get that way of thinking. But at our firm, we utilize the pre-order very differently. So we utilize it for strategically to build more pathways to your book, optimizing Amazon, running Amazon ads and things like that. So even if they don't do a pre-order, then your book pops up on Amazon, and Amazon kind of has to figure out where you belong. So the shorter pre-order is really beneficial. So I would ask them, is a pre-order part of the package? Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it for the print book? Are you going to do
Yes.
it for the ebook? Right. And then if
Yes.
they say that they are going to do a 6-month pre-order, tell them, oh, please no. You really want to have, I mean, right, Amy? I mean, when was the last time that you pre-ordered? I mean, maybe Harry Potter, because I know you're a huge fan. But I mean, when was the last time, other than a Harry Potter book, did you pre-order a book that far out?
Never.
Yeah.
I just never have.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So so a shorter pre-order, and that's the flip side of that is, yes, they're going to do a pre-order and it's going to be 6 months or a year long. It's like, oh my gosh, no, I shudder at that.
Yes. But I agree with you, Penny. The pre-order period, to your point, gets everything warmed up on Amazon. It's also a great time to potentially not do things exactly right. I know that sounds kind of counterproductive, but candidly, getting your book up and getting it up for pre-order and seeing it there is such a great way to also do a quick reassessment of how good your description is. Yep. You know what I mean? All those little tweaks that you can make, that ideally it's nice to do that ahead of when the real traffic starts hitting your page. You know what I mean? It's nice to see it up there and go, oh, I want to do this a little differently. The spacing's not quite right. I can, my bio seems a little skimpy. Maybe I can flesh this out a bit more. It just really hits different when you get to see it up on Amazon. And it's nice to be able to make those tweaks without the pressure of, like, the book is out, my marketing company is actively sending people to this page, and things aren't exactly right yet,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say the other issue with a pre-order that I help clients with, and we find workarounds, and sometimes it's just a matter of rolling with the punches. And so I have a lot of those conversations as well, but that authors are proactively, they actually understand, or, have some understanding of the benefits of a pre-order. And they come to you and I, and they set this up, they get their marketing lined up, and we've got a really great plan for them. But then they find out after the fact, and right at the, right at the finish line, that their publishing service doesn't really do that. You know what I mean? They don't have the support at their publishing service to get the pre-order organized and set up and the timing right. You know what I mean? We see that a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do see that a lot. And that's why it's really good to have a conversation with them about that and make sure that you get it in writing as well.
Yep, absolutely. Another big one that we deal with a lot, and again, we say this a lot on our shows, we have no original ideas. Everything that we talk about is really because we see it repeated over and over again. Problems that other authors deal with. Our goal is to help you learn from other people's struggles, mistakes, whatever. But the pricing, ask whoever you're publishing with, who determines the pricing? Do you get a say in that? Do you get a range to work from? And then also ask them if they do limited time discounts. This is usually more common for the ebook, but ask them if they, because again, not all these places have a huge staff, and it's not that they don't want to support their authors, but if it's not something they normally do, they may just not be set up to take, last minute requests like that, Penny. Like, I'd like to do a discount in the next couple of weeks. Can you help me discount my book for these days? And they get that email, and if it's not something they're used to doing, they kind of sit there probably like a deer in the headlights going, what?
Yeah.
So asking them about pricing, if you get a say in what your price is, if you get to change your price after the book is listed, if as needed to kind of suit, where the market's at. And then also ask them about limited time discounts. So just dropping your book price for a handful of days if they have somebody on hand to help you with that, if they in fact are in charge of your ebook for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. And the pricing, a lot of times what they'll tell you is that the price will be, there's a bunch of different factors that kind of factor in to what the book pricing is going to be. And that's a very fair statement. But I would definitely ask them, who gets final say on the pricing, et cetera. Are they open to, because let's say hypothetically that they come back to you and they say, well, you know what? We are going to price your print book, let's say it's contemporary romance or whatever, at $25. You want to be able to go back to them and say, WTF, why would you price that book at $5? Are you open to, because typically like a genre fiction book, they don't, you don't usually have like color interiors and all this other stuff that drives up the price. So you want to also be able to kind of negotiate with them and say, listen, we need to bring this in at a, at a price that is comparable with other titles in this genre. So that pricing is, we both of us cannot emphasize that enough. I think the other piece of this is managing your, can you manage your Kindle book? Meaning that can you have access to the Kindle book on the back end? Or can you access the print book on the back end? And let me kind of explain what this means. So the majority, I would say 99% of these done for you publishing options, and that includes hybrid, they go through Amazon KDP because it's easy. They have a KDP account. They load all their titles up through there. And getting access to those books getting access to your book can sometimes be tricky because then you have access to every book in their library, right? And a lot of publishers don't want to give you that kind of access. And I'll tell you in a minute why it's beneficial, but you really want to, that could potentially be a sticking point with a publisher, because let's say hypothetically that the publisher retires, right? Or they go on vacation, or they do you're having a hard time reaching them. All of these things are excuses that we've heard over the years. You have no access to your book to change things, like to change the keywords, to change the categories, to change, anything to change the pricing, as Amy said a minute ago. So it's really, really important. And the back end, when I refer to the back end of Amazon, I'm referring to the Kindle Direct Publishing portal. which, like I said, is usually where a lot of publishers publish their books. And the other reason why, and this isn't in our show notes, and we didn't really discuss this in the green room, but when I was just at Inkers Con, um, there was a speaker that she talked about. She was very successful, and she talked about how she changes her covers pretty regularly, which doesn't necessarily mean that she's popping up a new cover once a month, but she'll keep a cover up and she will test it. And by test it, I mean put it up on Amazon and see how the market responds. And if the book doesn't move quickly, then she will put up another cover within, 60 days or something, right? Which sounds like a lot, but this is one of the formulas that she uses, and she's very successful doing it. And then when she hits on a cover that works, then you know she doesn't do this a lot, but she explained that sometimes you fall in love with the cover and you think, oh my gosh, this is great. What happens in that situation if you have a book that's sitting on Amazon and it's not really doing anything, and you're like, oh my gosh, what can I do? What can I do? And somebody suggests to you, you know what, your cover's not really that strong. And if you write to us and your cover's not really that strong, you're probably hearing from Amy telling you the cover's really not really that strong or right for the market, right? And you can't access your page to change it. Now you're stuck, right? So that's another reason why you really want to have access to your Amazon page, because it just gives you more free reign to be able to do and make changes to your book.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's so important, Penny. And it's amazing how many clients, I think, especially in the last 5 years, that once they've come to us have actually gone with a hybrid option of using a service to do all of the things that are unique to print. And then they actually, to your advice earlier, gave it a shot and went ahead and handled their own Kindle book. And then they kind of get the best of both worlds,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And the next one, more Amazon related, but it matters. Ask them if you have a say in what goes on your Amazon page.
Oh my gosh.
And
yes.
I know it. And it's amazing. It sounds so simple, but it's amazing how many authors, clients that we've worked with, that have come back and have said, well, I've asked my, publisher if I can make these tweaks to the description. We'll see what they say, or I haven't heard back from them yet. And that just blows my mind. So all the things, your description, your keywords and categories, ask them if you can go back to them with requests, recommendations to get those updated and changed. And not just feedback and input on when the book goes up, but also, again, very important to, say, can we change these after the book is published? Because I think that's a big sticking point too, Penny, is that there might be a lot of places that are used to authors having some insight feedback when the book is being produced initially, but aren't necessarily, like I was saying earlier about the discount pricing, they're not necessarily set up to work with authors longer term on keeping these pages, these retail pages, dynamic, So it's not because it's not malicious. There's no ill will. It's just a lot of these places are not, that is not how they've set up to do their services. You know what I mean? It is not to assist you through the first year of your book while you get all these things just exactly right. So that's another important question to ask too. Do you have a say in what goes on your retail page, what your keywords and categories will be? And are you able to get in touch with somebody on their team to make updates to those after the book is already published, if it's in the best interest for you, and for engagement and sales conversions and things like that?
Yeah. And, I mean, to Amy's point, sales pages, retail pages are very dynamic things. So you want to make sure that you have access to all of that. And, hopefully the publisher that you've selected or that you're going to select is flexible. And, ultimately, I mean, if you are trying to figure out how to present this to them, if you're considering a company, you're like, oh, I really like these people, I hope they live up to, this list that I've now pulled off of the Amy and Penny Show podcast.
Right.
remember that they want, at the end of the day, if you succeed, they succeed because when you strike an arrangement like this with a publisher, they're making a percentage of your profits. So
Mhm.
if you succeed, they succeed, and this will help them succeed. And the other piece of that is the A plus content, right? So
Right.
if I had a dime for every author, and I'm sure Amy is in the same boat, um, if I had a dime for every author who says I can't do A plus content because I can't access my page, I would be
Hmm.
a gazillionaire. The challenge with so A plus content has to be uploaded through the KDP portal, and Amy does that, I should say, for our clients here. She designs the A plus, the imagery, and she uploads it, and the pages look beautiful. And part of the reason um, why A plus content is important, well, many reasons actually. It helps with the conversion, so it helps to convert a consumer into a buyer/reader. It keeps consumers on the page longer, which also helps with the conversion. And it also helps to, you get better reviews, you get fewer returns. Believe it or not, people do return books. And part of the reason why you get fewer returns is if you've ever been, maybe this has happened to you, or you've been in a writer's group where you've heard this, where somebody says, oh, I got a note from a reader that said they thought my book was XYZ and it was something else, and they were upset and they
Hmm.
wanted to return it, or they got a bad review or something. Granted, a lot of that has to do with the book description and the book cover, but A plus content can go a long way to mitigating that as well. So,
Yeah,
eh,
absolutely.
yeah,
I
and
agree.
yeah, and Amy, have you ever worked with anybody? Because I know the publishers can upload it. I mean, if the author can't access their KDP portal, the publishers can upload it. Have we worked in a situation where we've provided the imagery and the authors just kind of run with it? Or,
We have. Yep, we have done that before. And again, it's amazing. The author has, I think, not just a good relationship with their publisher, but also, they stood up for themselves too.
yeah.
I think and that makes a big difference. They didn't just say, "Oh, well, they said I couldn't do it." You know what I mean? Like, this is an author that's really like, "No, if this is in my best interest, we're going to make it happen." You know what I mean? And it really does go a long way. And so, yes, we absolutely have done that before, for a few authors that basically told their publisher, I'm going to, and what we do is we send the images, we send the content, I even go to the next level to clearly say what, templates we used, what to enter where, because, I really want this to be more of the norm for authors that don't have access to their books. I really want to help facilitate publishers being able to follow through with requests from authors because they want to make things better for their book, for their retail. They want to make engagement better. You know what I mean? Like that really does make the most sense. So, in those rare occasions where an author has a publisher where they may not have had A plus content as an option, but they managed to make it work, like I definitely do my best to make it straightforward and easy for the publisher to take that content, get it uploaded for them, because hopefully, you know what I mean? It shows the publisher too, like, look, this is something you can do. This can be easy and simple. Make this more widely available to your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if the publisher is willing, if the publisher is willing to do that, I mean, again, everybody wins in a situation like that.
Yeah. And my last one, it's not really, and it was just something that occurred to me while we were talking about this, Penny. And obviously, this is not the be all end all, but I would encourage authors, if you were looking at potentially using a publisher or publishing service, and most of them will feature the books that they've worked on before. I encourage you to go and check out the retail pages for those authors and those books. Like, check out the covers, check out the descriptions, just look at the overall vibe of the retail pages across multiple clients that publisher has worked with, and just kind of see how those books are presented to the market. Because, problems leave clues. Penny, you always say success leaves clues, which is absolutely true. but issues can also leave clues as well. You know what I mean? So if you see consistent kind of like, oh, that's not so great across the board, you may want to really make sure that you drill into that when you start chatting with the publisher. And, if that's something that's important to you or something that we've covered, say, I've noticed this. What's the deal with that? What are my options? Can this be better? You know what I mean?
Right, right, exactly. And you know what? I'll tell you something. The other piece of this too is that part of the reason why you want to Google authors and see who else they've worked with before is because you want to make sure that like take a look at the covers of some of these books, right? If you don't like those book covers, I promise you that a magical, mystical, awesome cover designer is not going to drop out of the sky to do your book cover and to make it much
Right.
better. So, I'm just, just putting that out there. And, as Amy said, take a look at their Amazon pages, take a look at, see what they're, just get a real sense. And I'll tell you something else too. Authors are very willing to share their experiences. It's a great community. Email them, find their websites, email them, ask them what their experience was. And if they can give you any insight or any kind of feedback before you sign on the dotted line. Or, as I mentioned earlier, of course, I'm a control freak, although I prefer control enthusiast. I like to control all my content on all the Amazon pages and whatnot. So that's just my take, but it's not that hard to do it yourself. And I'm pretty sure we have some shows on just that topic. I want to thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I want to thank you all for listening in. And I have to tell you, Amy is doing this. She's such a trooper. Our website went down on Friday. What a friggin' nightmare. We were not going to spend a lot of time on that. So if you reach out to us, we actually had a listener call us and go, hey, your website's down. I'm like, dude, I know. We have malware. Oh my gosh. I was on a plane going to a speaking event. It was a Friday. I'm like, Amy, you got to help me. I'm like, I can't do anything. Do you want me to cancel my trip? Like I cancel my, it was like pandemonium. And so it's been like really just traumatic. I mean, the site is fine now and it's been up, but after a site goes down from hacking or malware or whatever, there's a cleanup process and you have to read like blah, blah, all this other really weird jargon that I'm not going to bore you with. But anyway, so Amy has had quite the week and now she is actually recording this podcast in her car because her kids have summer camp.
Right? So the glamorous life.
the glamorous life of her. But I'll tell you something. Your recording studio car sounds really good.
Good. I know. I might actually do this more often as long as I don't, overheat.
Right.
That would be the only problem. Doing it in the summer would be the overheating. But it's actually not a bad. I feel like I'm in a nice little soundproof, container unit. Like it's actually, I might be onto something, believe it or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think you sound fantastic and such a trooper doing it in your car. And especially in the summer heat of well, pretty much anywhere right now in the country. So we are going to stop the show here so that Amy can turn on her AC and cool back down again because we're going to be recording another show. And I'm sure at this point it's like 900 degrees in her car. You could probably cook eggs on her dashboard. Not that she'd want to, but I'm just saying. I want to thank you all so much for listening to the show. And we thank you for your shows, ideas, and we welcome a review wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with somebody who you think can benefit from it. Share it with a fellow author. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.